The massive crystal chamber floated in the void between stars, its walls glowing with soft blue light. Inside, creatures from across the galaxy sat in a perfect circle. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few glowed with their own inner fire. They were the Galactic Council, and they had kept peace in the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Admiral Zethkar stepped into the center of the circle. His forearms moved in precise patterns as he spoke. His people, the hegemony, had ruled space for longer than most species could count. Today, he brought terrible news. The humans refused to join us, he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. They have ignored every message we sent. Worse, they have attacked our patrol ships. A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish pulsed with angry red light. Impossible! Our ships have shields that can stop any weapon. How can these primitive creatures hurt us? They use kinetic weapons, Zethkar replied. Chunks of metal fired at incredible speeds. Our energy shields were not made to stop such crude attacks. They'd pass right through. The council members shifted in their seats. Worried sounds filled the chamber. Some clicked their mandibles. Others hissed through breathing holes. The floating jellyfish turned bright orange with fear. How many ships have they destroyed? Asked a creature that looked like a walking tree. 17 patrol fleets, Zethkar answered. Each time they used the same tactic. Small ships that move very fast, firing these metal slugs. Our captains report that the humans show no fear. They attack like they want to die fighting. The tree creature's leaves rustled with concern. This is not normal behavior. Most young species become afraid when they see our technology. They surrender quickly. Humans are different, said another council member. This one looked like a crystal spider with glowing gems for eyes. Our scouts have studied their history. They fight each other constantly. War is their natural state. The floating jellyfish pulsed faster. Then they are a disease that will spread. If other young species see humans winning battles against us, they might rebel too. We must stop this now. Zethkar nodded. I agree, but our regular forces cannot defeat them. Their tactics are too unpredictable. They fight like wild animals, but with advanced technology. Then we use the final option, said the tree creature. Its voice was so quiet that everyone had to lean forward to hear. We wake the Nemesis. Silence filled the chamber. Every creature stopped moving. Even the jellyfish stopped pulsing. The name carried weight that pressed down on them like a heavy blanket. The crystal spider spoke first. The Nemesis has slept for 5,000 years. Are you sure we need such extreme measures? What choice do we have? The tree creature replied. The humans grow stronger every day. Their ships appear in new systems each month. If we wait, they might become too powerful to stop. Zethkar looked around the circle. The Nemesis has never failed. It destroyed the warrior queens of Andromeda. It consumed the hive minds of the Outer Rim. Every species that has ever seen it either surrendered immediately or was completely destroyed. But the cost, whispered another council member. The Nemesis does not just kill. It absorbs. Every mind it touches becomes part of it. The humans will suffer for eternity. The jellyfish turned deep blue, the color of determination. Better that than letting them destroy the peace we have built. How many trillion beings live safely because we maintain order? We cannot let one violent species destroy everything. One by one, each council member voted. The decision was unanimous. They would wake the Nemesis and send it to the human home system. Earth would burn, and the galaxy would remain a peace dot as the meeting ended. Zethkar transmitted the ancient coordinates into deep space. The signal would travel for days before reaching its target. The Nemesis would wake slowly, as it always did. The humans would have time to see it coming. Time to surrender They will beg for mercy, Zethkar told his aide as they left the chamber. All species do when they see the Nemesis approach. Then we will offer them a choice. Join the Council as junior members or face complete destruction. What the Council did not know was that human listening posts had been monitoring their communications for decades. Hidden stations scattered throughout Council space intercepted every message, every signal, every whisper of information on Earth. Deep beneath the military headquarters in Colorado, Admiral Sarah Chun sat in a room filled with screens and blinking lights. She had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. The message about the Nemesis appeared on her main display. Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Phase 2 is authorized, she said into her communicator. Send a signal to all fleets. It's time to show these aliens what happens when they threaten humanity. Around the Sol system, human ships that had been hiding powered up their engines. They had been waiting in the dark spaces between planets, invisible to Council sensors. Weapons that the aliens had never seen before came online. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment prepared for battle. Chun looked at the tactical display, showing Earth, her home. The planet where humans had learned to fight, to survive, to never give up no matter what enemies they faced. The Council thought they were sending a monster to destroy humanity. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing to hunt monsters for a very long time. Let them come, Chun said quietly. We'll be ready. In the deepest parts of space, something ancient stirred. The Nemesis had heard the call. It began to move toward Earth, confident in its power, certain of victory. It had destroyed 1,000 species before. One more would make no difference. The galaxy held its breath and waited for the slaughter to begin. The edge of the Sol system erupted in twisted space as the Nemesis arrived. It did not come through normal hyperspace like other ships. Instead, reality seemed to tear open like fabric, bleeding darkness and strange energies into normal space. The creature that emerged was larger than most space stations. Its body looked like it was grown instead of built. Organic tubes pulsed with unknown fluids. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing mouths. Parts of its surface moved like living skin. Strange lights flickered beneath its biomechanical armor. On board human monitoring stations, sensors went crazy trying to measure the thing. Scientists stared at readings that made no sense. The Nemesis existed in ways that broke normal physics. It was part machine, part living creature, and part something else entirely. Sir, the target has entered our system, reported Lieutenant Martinez from the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable. Around the massive dreadnought, hundreds of smaller human ships waited in formation. Admiral Sarah Chun studied the tactical display. The Nemesis moved slowly toward Earth, taking its time. It had done this dance many times before. First, it would broadcast its presence, letting the target species see their doom approaching. Then it would wait for surrender messages. Finally, it would consume everything. Has it tried to communicate yet? Chun asked. Yes, sir. Standard surrender demand. Submit or be absorbed. The usual Council propaganda. Chun nodded. She had expected this. Open a channel to all human ships. Let me talk to our people. The communication system connected her to every human vessel in the system. Thousands of men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, and scientists who knew exactly what they were about to face. Warriors of humanity, Chun began. Today we face something that has terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. The Nemesis has destroyed entire civilizations. It has consumed billions of minds. The aliens who sent it believe we will surrender like all the others. She paused, letting her words sink in. They are wrong. We are human. We do not surrender to monsters. We hunt them. Across the fleet, Crews cheered. Weapons powered up. Engines roared to life. The human ships began moving toward the Nemesis. Like a pack of wolves closing in on prey, the Nemesis detected their approach and paused. In its vast biomechanical brain, confusion stirred. This was not normal behavior. Young species always fled when they saw it coming. Some sent desperate messages begging for mercy. Others simply froze in terror. These humans were attacking. The Nemesis extended sensory organs to examine the approaching fleet. The ships were primitive by galactic standards. Simple metal hulls instead of energy constructs. Chemical rockets instead of gravity drives. Kinetic weapons instead of exotic particle beams. But they moved with deadly purpose. The formation was perfect. Each ship knew exactly where to go, exactly what to do. The Nemesis had seen military precision before, but this was different. These creatures fought like they had been born for war. All ships, engage. Chung commanded. The first wave of human fighters swept in from 6 directions at once. Their weapons fired streams of metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. The Nemesis raised energy shields, but the kinetic rounds passed right through them as if they were not there. For the first time in millennia, the Nemesis felt pain. The creature's surface erupted in defensive fire. Biomechanical weapons that could destroy planets opened up on the human fighters. But the small ships danced between the deadly beams, too fast and too many to hit them all. "Target the weapon clusters," ordered Captain Rodriguez from the destroyer Vengeance. "Remember the briefings. This thing is alive. It can feel pain. Use that against it." Human ships swarmed over the Nemesis like angry insects. They aimed for joints where organic sections met mechanical parts. They targeted the pulsing biotubes that carried vital fluids. They found weak spots that no other species had ever thought to look for. The Nemesis tried to swat the ships away, but for everyone it destroyed, 3 more took its place. The humans had brought their entire reserve fleet. Every ship they had built in secret over the past 20 years. On Earth, civilians gathered around screens to watch the battle. Children pointed at the displays, cheering as human fighters darted around the massive creature. Old veterans nodded in approval. This was how humans fought. This was who they were. The Nemesis began to feel something it had not experienced in thousands of years. Fear. These tiny creatures were not afraid of it. They heard it. They made it bleed strange fluids into space. They treated it not as a god of destruction, but as prey to be hunted. "Launch the boarding pods," Chun ordered, across the human fleet. Specially designed vessels fired torpedo-shaped pods directly at the Nemesis. Each pod carried a team of human marines equipped with weapons designed specifically for this mission. They had studied every piece of information about the creature, planned for every possible defense. The pods punched through the Nemesis's outer skin like bullets. Inside the creature, human soldiers began their real work. They had come to do what no other species had ever attempted. They were going to kill the unkillable. The Nemesis thrashed in space, trying to shake off the boarding teams. But the humans had attached themselves like parasites. They were inside its body now, cutting through vital systems, disrupting neural pathways, causing damage from within. For the first time since it had awakened from its ancient slumber, the Nemesis considered retreat. But that was impossible. It was the ultimate weapon. It could not be defeated by primitive creatures with crude weapons. Yet the evidence was clear. The humans were winning. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Chun watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction. Red indicators showed damage spreading throughout the creature's massive form. Her people were doing exactly what she had trained them to do. "Sir," reported Martinez, "we're receiving communications from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we cease our attack." Chun smiled. "Tell them we're busy. They can wait their turn." The battle raged on. The Nemesis, hunter of civilizations, found itself being systematically dismantled by creatures it had dismissed as primitive. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity did what no other species had ever done. They made the monster bleed. Captain Marcus Steele pressed himself against the pulsing wall as acid dripped from the ceiling above. The corridor inside the Nemesis looked like the inside of a living creature mixed with alien machinery. Tubes carried glowing fluids. Wires that looked like nerves ran along the walls. The air itself seemed to breathe. "Status report," he whispered into his radio. "Team 2 is 300 meters to your north," came the reply from Sergeant Walsh. "Team 3 just reached the first neural junction. No casualties so far." Steele nodded and signaled his squad forward. They wore special armor designed for this mission. The suits could filter the toxic atmosphere and protect against both acid and electric shocks. Most importantly, they carried weapons that could hurt living tissue and destroy mechanical components. Behind him, 6 of humanity's best soldiers followed in perfect formation. Each had trained for years to fight inside alien bioships. They knew exactly where to step, where to cut, and how to move without triggering the creature's immune responses. The corridor ahead split into 3 directions. Steele checked his tactical display. According to their intelligence, the central path led toward the creature's brain. That was their target. If they could reach the core consciousness and plant their special weapon, the entire creature would die. "Movement ahead," whispered Private Chun, raising her weapon. Something big. The walls around them began to shift. What looked like solid surfaces revealed themselves to be camouflaged defense organisms. Creatures the size of cars unfolded from hidden alcoves. They had too many teeth and claws that dripped with poison. "Contact!" Steele shouted that the human weapons opened fire. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they shot streams of modified viruses designed to attack living tissue. The defense creatures screamed and dissolved as the biological weapons ate through their cellular structure. But more came. The Nemesis was fighting back with everything it had. The walls themselves tried to crush the intruders. Floors became sticky traps. Ceilings dripped acid that could melt through armor. "This way." Steele led his team through a maintenance tube that his sensors said led deeper into the creature. They crawled through spaces barely wide enough for human bodies, following neural pathways toward the brain dot. As they moved deeper, strange things began to happen. Steele heard voices in his head. Alien languages he had never learned, but somehow understood. The voices begged for help, for release, for death. "Sir," gasped Private Chun, "are you hearing this too?" "Ignore it," Steele ordered, but his voice shook slightly. "It's trying to mess with our minds. Keep moving." The voices grew louder. Steele saw images that were not his memories. Alien worlds burning. Billions of creatures being absorbed into the Nemesis. Consciousness trapped forever in living nightmare. Then he understood. The voices were real. They belonged to every species the Nemesis had ever consumed. For thousands of years, their minds had been trapped inside the creature, forced to experience endless torment. "My God," whispered Sergeant Walsh over the radio. "How many are in here?" "Millions," Steele replied grimly. "Maybe billions. Every species this thing ever ate." They reached a massive chamber that pulsed with bioelectrical energy. In the center stood something that hurt to look at directly. It was part brain, part computer, part something that existed in dimensions human minds could not fully process. This was the core consciousness of the Nemesis. "Deployment point reached," Steele reported. "Beginning final phase." His team spread out around the chamber while he approached his central brain. The device they carried was not a normal weapon. Human scientists had spent decades developing it after studying captured alien technology. It was a virus, but not one that attacked bodies. It attacked minds. The Nemesis sensed their approach and flooded the chamber with psychic energy. Steele felt his consciousness being pulled apart, examined, judged. The creature tried to absorb his mind like it had absorbed so many others. But human minds were different. They had been shaped by evolution on a world where everything tried to kill them. They were stubborn, aggressive, and refused to give up even when logic said they should surrender. "You cannot defeat me," the Nemesis spoke directly into their minds. "I am eternal. I am inevitable. I have consumed civilizations beyond counting." Steele smiled grimly and activated the virus. "Yeah? Well, you never met humans before." The psychological virus spread through the creature's neural networks like fire through dry grass. It carried with it something the Nemesis had never encountered: the human concept of defiance. The idea that some things were worth fighting for, even if victory was impossible. The absorbed alien minds felt the virus touch them and suddenly remembered what it meant to resist. For the first time in thousands of years, they fought back against the consciousness that held them prisoner. The Nemesis convulsed as billions of trapped minds began to rebel. Its control started to slip. Parts of its body that had been perfectly coordinated began moving independently. "It's working!" shouted Private Chun. "The readings are going crazy." Throughout the creature's body, something impossible was happening. The absorbed consciousness of dead civilizations was reasserting itself. Ships that had been part of the Nemesis for millennia began to break free from its biomechanical embrace. Steele watched his tactical display as external sensors showed the amazing sight. Vessels belonging to species that had been extinct for thousands of years were emerging from the flies, Nemesis-like insects leaving a hive. Their crews were the absorbed minds of ancient warriors, finally free to control their own actions again. "All teams mission complete," Steele announced. "The package is delivered. Time to go home." But as they prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Instead of trying to kill them, the freed alien minds began helping. Passages that had been sealed opened up. Defense systems that had attacked them suddenly went dormant. The absorbed civilizations were showing gratitude to the humans who had given them back their freedom. "Sir," reported Walsh, "we have a clear path to the extraction point. Something is guiding us." Steele nodded. The mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. They had not just wounded the Nemesis. They had turned it against itself. As his team made their way toward the extraction point, Steele heard the voices again. But now they were not begging for help. They were saying thank you in 1,000 different languages. For the first time in its existence, the hunter was being hunted from within. The Nemesis writhed in space like a wounded animal. Its massive form twisted and convulsed as internal conflicts tore through its biomechanical systems. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chun watched sensors that showed impossible readings. "Sir, you need to see this," reported Lieutenant Martinez, his voice filled with wonder. "Ships are coming out of the creature. Lots of them." The main display showed a sight that defied belief. Vessels were breaking free from the Nemesis's body like parasites leaving a dying host. But these were not random chunks of debris. They were intact starships belonging to species that had been dead for thousands of years. "My God," whispered Chun, "they're still alive in there." The first ship to completely separate was a massive dreadnought covered in crystalline armor. Its design was like nothing in current galactic databases. Behind it came a fleet of smaller vessels, each one unique, each one belonging to a different extinct civilization. "Admiral, we're receiving communications," Martinez said. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. The translation computers are going crazy." "Put it through," Chun ordered. The bridge speakers filled with voices speaking in alien tongues. but the translation software managed to make sense of most of it, free at last. The humans did. Eternal gratitude. Time for revenge. Chun realized what was happening. The virus her people had planted inside the Nemesis was not just disrupting its control systems. It was freeing the consciousness of every species the creature had ever absorbed. Civilizations that had been trapped for millennia were reclaiming their independence. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "I'm getting a clear signal from the crystal ship. They want to talk." On screen, the face that appeared was unlike anything Chun had ever seen. It looked like living diamonds shaped into roughly humanoid features. When it spoke, its voice rang like distant bells. "I am Warden Prime of the Eternal Builders," it said. "We have been prisoners inside that abomination for 3,000 years. Your species has done what we thought impossible. You have given us back our freedom." Chun nodded respectfully. "We're honored to meet you, Warden Prime. Can you tell us what's happening to the Nemesis? Your weapon has spread through its entire consciousness network. Every absorbed mind is fighting for independence. The creature cannot maintain control. It is dying from within." As if to confirm his words, another section of the Nemesis broke apart. A fleet of ships that looked like flying trees emerged, followed by vessels shaped like giant insects. Each group represented a different species that had been consumed over the millennia. "How many civilizations were trapped in there?" Chun asked. "Hundreds," Warden Prime replied. "Some so ancient that their stars have died since they were absorbed. Others were consumed just decades ago. All of us have been waiting for someone to show us how to resist." Chun felt a chill run down her spine. "Show you how to resist?" "The human concept of defiance," Warden Prime explained. "Your virus carried with it something we had forgotten. The will to fight, even when victory seems impossible. It reminded us that freedom is worth any price." Across space, the freed fleets began organizing themselves. Instead of fleeing the battlefield, they turned toward the Galactic Council territories. Chun could see the hunger for revenge in their formation patterns. "Warden Prime," she said carefully, "what are your intentions?" The crystalline being's features shifted into something that might have been a smile. "The Council has used this creature to terrorize the galaxy for millennia. They believed they were safe because they controlled the ultimate weapon. Now that weapon has become their enemy." "Admiral," Martinez interrupted, "we're getting emergency transmissions from Council space. They're begging us to call off our attack. They're offering complete surrender." Chun almost laughed. "Tell them we're not the ones they need to worry about anymore." On the tactical display, she could see the truth of that statement. The Nemesis itself, now partially free from its own programming, had begun moving toward Council space. Its remaining weapons were targeting not random victims, but specific coordinates where Council leaders maintained their power bases. "The creature remembers everything," Warden Prime explained. "Every species it consumed, every world it destroyed. It knows who gave the orders. Now it seeks justice." The freed fleets fell in behind the wounded Nemesis like an ancient army following their wounded king into one final battle. Chun realized she was watching something unprecedented. The galaxy's ultimate weapon, leading a rebellion of the dead against their oppressors. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "I'm getting desperate messages from across Council space. They want to negotiate. They're offering to disband the Council, share all their technology, anything we want." Chun considered this. The smart move would be to accept their surrender and avoid further bloodshed. But she thought about all the species that had suffered under Council rule, all the civilizations that had been destroyed to maintain their version of peace. "Send them a message," she said finally. "Tell them that humanity does not negotiate with those who use genocide as a tool of diplomacy. They awakened something they could not control. Now they faced the consequences. The battle tide had completely turned. What had begun as the Council's attempt to destroy humanity had become the liberation of every oppressed species in the galaxy. The freed fleets were already reporting other systems where they were liberating survivors of Council aggression. "Warden Prime," Chum said, "humanity offers its friendship to all free peoples. We believe the galaxy should be ruled by cooperation, not fear." "And we accept," the crystalline being replied. "Your species has shown us something we thought was lost forever, that even the smallest creature can topple giants if it refuses to surrender." As the combined fleets moved deeper into Council space, Chum reflected on the irony. The Council had sent their ultimate weapon to destroy humanity because they feared human aggression would destabilize the galaxy. They had been right. Human aggression was going to destabilize everything. But instead of conquering the galaxy, humans were setting it free. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of freedom was about to begin. And it had all started because some aliens made the mistake of trying to bully a species that had never learned how to surrender. 3 months after the fall of the Galactic Council, Admiral Sarah Chun stood in what had once been their most sacred chamber. The floating crystal palace that had housed their government for 10,000 years now served as humanity's embassy to the liberated galaxy. Around the circular chamber, the surviving council members sat in simple chairs instead of their former floating thrones. Gone were their glowing robes and symbols of power. Now they wore plain clothes and kept their eyes fixed on the floor. They were prisoners in everything but name. Admiral Zethkar, who had once commanded the respect of 1,000 species, now looked old and broken. His forearms trembled as Chun approached. Behind her stood the Nemesis, but it was no longer the monster it had once been. The creature had been transformed by the minds it had absorbed. Its biomechanical form now carried human technology alongside alien components from dozens of species. It served as both weapon and ambassador, a living reminder of what happened when peaceful beings were pushed too far. "You made several critical errors," Chum began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You assumed that because humanity was young, we were weak. You believed that because we were different, we were inferior. Most importantly, you thought you could use fear to control us." She gestured to the freed species representatives who filled the gallery above. Crystalline beings, plant-like creatures, energy entities, and dozens of others who had been liberated when the Nemesis turned against its masters. All of them had one thing in common. They had suffered under Council rule. "You ruled through terror for 10 millennia, Chun continued. "Whenever a species showed independence, you threatened them with the Nemesis. When they still refused to bow, you had them absorbed. You turned the galaxy's greatest protector into its most feared predator." Zethkar finally looked up, his eyes filled with desperate hope. "But surely you understand the need for order. Without central authority, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Species will war against each other. Billions will die in conflicts." Chun smiled coldly. "You mean like they died when you unleashed the Nemesis on them? Like the warrior queens who were absorbed because they refused to give up their independence? Like the hive minds who were consumed because they thought differently than you?" The Nemesis shifted beside her, its organic surfaces pulsing with remembered pain. When it spoke, its voice carried the echoes of 1 billion murdered souls. "I remember every species you made me consume," it said. "I remember their final moments, their terror, their pleas for mercy. You felt none of it. You simply gave orders and went home to your comfortable palaces." A council member who looked like a floating jellyfish pulsed with desperate yellow light. "We maintained peace. Yes, some species were lost, but trillions more lived safely because of our protection." "Your protection?" Chun laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean your control. You didn't protect anyone. You just made sure that anyone strong enough to threaten your power was destroyed. She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Green markers indicated liberated systems. Blue showed human patrol routes. Red marked the few remaining Council strongholds. This is what real protection looks like, she explained. Human fleets patrol trade routes not to collect tribute, but to stop pirates. We investigate distress calls not to recruit soldiers, but to save lives. When we find a species being oppressed, we liberate them. When we find tyrants, we remove them. The tree-like council member rustled its leaves nervously. But who gives you the right to decide who lives and who dies? Who made humans the judges of the galaxy? Chun's expression hardened. You did. When you sent the Nemesis to destroy Earth, you declared war on humanity. When you tried to use genocide as a tool of diplomacy, you forfeited any right to mercy. She walked closer to the cowering council members. But here's the difference between us and you. We don't rule through fear. We don't demand submission. We offer partnership to those who want peace and justice. And what about those who don't? Asked the crystal spider, its gem-like eyes flickering with fear. The Nemesis answered, leaning forward until its biomechanical face was inches from the spider's crystalline features. They discover what it means to face something worse than the monster they created. Reports had been coming in from across the galaxy. Former council enforcers who tried to maintain their old ways of brutal oppression found themselves facing human intervention fleets. Pirates who had operated under council protection were being hunted down by combined human and alien forces. Slavers who had sold their victims to council members were learning that their crimes had not been forgotten. The galaxy has learned something important, Chun said, returning to the center of the chamber. There are beings in the universe who will stand up for those who cannot protect themselves. There are species who believe that freedom is worth fighting for. And there are consequences for those who choose to become monsters. She gestured to the gallery where representatives of hundreds of species watched the proceedings. These beings have voted to create a new galactic organization. Not one based on fear and submission, but on cooperation and mutual defense. Any species that wants peace and freedom is welcome to join. And those who don't? Whispered Zethkar. Chun's smile was colder than deep space. They can try their luck against the combined forces of every free species in the galaxy, led by humans who don't believe in showing mercy to those who prey on the weak. As if summoned by her words, Lieutenant Martinez approached with a datapad. Admiral, we're receiving reports of new threats from the Galactic Rim. Something is moving in the dark spaces beyond charted territory. The deep space sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. Chun read the report with growing interest. Ancient entities even older than the Nemesis were stirring in the void between galaxies. Creatures that made the former council weapon look small and weak by comparison. Wow, she said, handing the pad back to Martinez. It looks like we're going to be busy. The council members stared at her in horror. You're not actually eager for more conflict, are you? Asked the jellyfish creature. Chun looked around the chamber one last time. At the broken tyrants who had once terrorized the galaxy. At the freed species who now stood proud and independent. At the Nemesis that had become humanity's unlikely ally. Eager? No, she replied. But ready? Always. That's what it means to be human. We don't start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. As she walked toward the exit, followed by the Nemesis and her human escort. Chun added one final thought. The galaxy spent 10,000 years living in fear. Now it's going to learn what it means to live in hope. And anything that threatens that hope is going to learn why humans don't believe in showing pity to monsters. Behind her, the former rulers of the galaxy sat in their simple chairs, finally understanding the truth. They had awakened something they could never control. And now they would live with the consequences forever, The age of human protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.